All right, good morning. How is everybody doing today? That is loud. Ooh, can y'all cut me down just a little bit, Ethan? I don't know if I got this thing too high or if that's too loud. There we go. All right, there we go. That's better, I think. It's good to see everybody this morning. It's time to begin our Bible study, and before we get into our lesson today, I want to ask everybody to please keep Dennis Schuenoff in your prayers. He is up in the hospital right now in ICU, and I don't have a lot of details. The only thing I'm aware of is Jackie said that he had an issue choking on some food, and now he's in ICU up there. So I'm just waiting to hear some more details about it. But that's all of that I know. But please pray for him in the situation that he's going through right now, as we will this morning. So if you will, please pray with me. Heavenly Father, we are grateful for another day that you've blessed us with, Lord. Such a cool, nice morning that we can enjoy, Lord, and we get to come together, Lord, and look at your word and study from it and glean some things from it, Lord. And we're grateful that we have that opportunity and that privilege, Lord. We ask you, Lord, to please at this time be with Mr. Dennis, Lord, and you know the things that he's going through, and you know the situation, and Lord, we just ask you that his health can be restored to him. We ask you, Lord, to be with the doctors that'll be looking at what's going on with him, Lord. We know that he's on a ventilator, Lord, but we know that, Lord, you can do whatever you want to do. And we just ask you, Lord, to just bless that situation. Please be with Miss Jackie and just comfort her through this, Lord. She has been through a lot, and Mr. Dennis has been through a lot. And we just ask you, Lord, to comfort them during this time and bless them in your Son's name. Amen. So last week we stopped in Deuteronomy 6. And I believe we stopped with the discussion about how important it is, especially from Deuteronomy 6 and 7, how important it is and what God said in teaching our children the things that are important to Him, His Word. That's extremely important. And so from that we'll start in verses 8 and 9 about the law. And so in verse 8 of chapter 6 of Deuteronomy, he says, "You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes." I'm just going to drop that down a little bit. "You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates." All right? And so the law, the idea here is that the law should always be kept before us. In other words, write it here, write it there. If I see it, and I see it, and I see it, then it's going to help me do what? It's going to help me to remember, right? There was a guy that had a guy that came out with a book, and it was about being able to achieve all your goals and whatnot in life. And one of the things that he did is he always wrote his goals, whatever it was that week. He would put them on little stick-it pads, and he would put it on the refrigerator. The places he knew he would frequent during the week, he would always have those goals written down. Why? So he could focus on those things and embed it into his mind that you've got to achieve this, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. And so the idea here in verses 8 and 9 of Deuteronomy 6 is that the law of God should constantly be before them. Okay, and now taking his words literally, and that's what the Jews did here, they had their Totabath and their Mezuzah, the former of which, the phylacteries of the New Testament, were strips of parchment on which passages of the law were written, and these, enclosed in a box, were bound to the forehead and left wrist, and worn at prayers by the worshipers. The latter a slip of parchment on which were written certain passages of Scripture, and which, enclosed in a reed or a cylinder, was fixed on the right hand doorpost of every room in the house. The Lord was not so much ordaining the wearing of the law and posting it in one's house as He was teaching that we should ever keep it before us. And so when you get to Jesus' time, what you would see with the religious elite is they would literally wear these phylacteries, and they would have scriptures placed on parchment inside of those. And so it was a show that, hey, I'm doing what he said here in verses 8 and 9. I'm keeping his law before me, right? I'm wearing it literally on my person. And so with it, I'm trying to give off the impression that what? His law means what to me? Everything. Now, here's the reality of it. Can I wear God's law but not necessarily be a follower of God's law? Yes, I can. Can I create a facade? Yes, I can. And we do that. And so many, I think, fall into that sometimes. I mean, when we were adding on to our house, the guy that was doing it, he said, "Hey, y'all should write scriptures on the when he was roughing it in." He said, and putting the shell up, he said, "Write scriptures on inside the walls or whatnot." And it was a good idea. We did it. But I can do that, y'all, and still not be a follower of God, right? I can wear all of my T-shirts and have all my decals on my car, and I can do all that stuff. And that's a pretty good facade, right? Because when somebody sees that, what do they immediately think? Well, I'm a Christian, and I'm a follower of God, and this and that. And it's a good facade, but we also have to understand that our Father, He looks to the inside, to the heart, to the mind, and He knows all things, right? And although we can create a facade, and what's amazing is a lot of these teachers, this religious elite who wore these phylacteries and put up that facade, these are also some of the same people that would criticize the Messiah, criticize the Lord, and would find reasons to try to cause Him issues. Right? He's right before them, and they missed it. Even having from a facade type look, they still missed it. And we got to be careful with that too, that we're not just trying to create a facade, but we are truly His. I'm not just wearing the T-shirt, but this is who I am. Right? Because I can fool man, I can't fool God. Because a lot of people looking at the Pharisees and such. A lot of people thought highly of them. They thought that these were deeply religious individuals, right? And Jesus said, "Y'all are like whitewashed tombs." He wasn't very kind to from a verbal standpoint. You get to I think it was Matthew's gospel where he issues the 7 woes to them, right? So we got to be careful with that. That it's not just for show in our lives. All right, verses 10 through 12, the danger of prosperity. Verse 10, "So it shall be when the Lord your God brings you into the land of which He swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you large and beautiful cities which you did not build, houses full of all good things which you did not fill, hewn out wells which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant. When you have eaten and are full of them, then beware, lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage." And so the Lord here, He's warning them that this prosperity that you're about to have is going to be good, correct? I'm giving you what I told you I was going to give you, but there's a warning here that sometimes prosperity can be an issue. All right? Is he right about that? Can prosperity sometimes be an issue? How? You get complacent. Okay? You get complacent. You think about it. When you're in the grind and you're in the struggle and literally, you are hanging on, to the last can of Campbell's soup or whatever it is. You are literally hanging on every prayer, correct? And then you think of how easy it is when you are not in that grind, and when when you're not in the great struggle, so to speak. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad I'm not. I mean, if I have a choice, I know what choice I want to make, right, Henry? I don't want to have to do that. But I think about when we're completely dependent upon our God, when we're in those moments. It's it's harder sometimes to fall away than it is when we have so much, because you can get comfortable. All right? That's not a knock on having a lot of things. We just got to be careful that our perspective doesn't get skewed and we get comfortable. And where in this case, they would become complacent. They would get so used to all of this stuff that God was going to give them that they could fall away from Him. It says here, the Lord warned Israel of the danger of becoming negligent of His word after they settled in the land of Canaan, even as there were temptations peculiar to the wilderness wandering, so also there are temptations associated with prosperity. Wealthy men tend to forget God, being consumed with things. And so if we can become complacent, we can be lulled to sleep, so to speak, spiritually, right? And some people might even fall into the danger of forgetting who gave them what they have and thinking they did. All right? Thinking that they did these things. We forget, y'all, that the talents that we use to build lives and be able to get a house and get land and have a family and raise that family and do this and do that, it all originates from the very skills that God gave us. Correct? That's what it comes from. Okay? And we got to be mindful of that, because there's a danger in prosperity itself as well. And then in verses 13 through 19, he talks about the danger of worshiping other gods. Moses reminded Israel not to provoke the Lord to jealousy by worshiping other gods. The religion of the Lord is monotheistic. These statements do not recognize the existence of other gods, only that men worship other gods. The worship of other gods would be tempting the Lord, verse 19, instead of stepping outside the Lord's commandments. Israel should diligently obey the Lord's law, that things may go well for them when they entered Canaan. And so with that, they're going to have to clear this land out. We'll get to that in a second. But always do not go to other gods. In other words, what Moses is saying here, once again, the theme of all three of these big sermons he's given in Deuteronomy, if you could tie it down to a thesis, is remember. Remember. Okay? What happened the last time some of y'all went and started worshiping other gods? How did that work out for you? Exactly. Remember. Remember. Okay? If you remember, you will be fine. But the problem with remembrance is sometimes we forget. And there's the issue. Or one generation remembers. You think about Joshua, right, in Genesis. Joshua was, you you look at where he's at, and Pharaoh makes him the second most powerful man in Egypt, right? And probably the generation after Joseph still remembered Joseph and how he was talked about. But then what happens as you get into those other generations? Eventually what happens? They forgot about Joseph, right? And that's why it was so easy to do what they did, to enslave and throw the Hebrews, the Israelites, into bondage, because they forgot. And then he finishes here in chapter 6, in verses 20 through 25, to say here, when your son asks you in the time to come, saying, what is the meaning of the testimonies, the statutes, and the judgments which the Lord our God has commanded you, then you shall say to your son, we were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. And the Lord showed signs and wonders before our eyes, great and severe, against Egypt, Pharaoh, and all his household. And then he brought us out from there, that he might bring us in to give us the land of which he swore to our fathers. And the Lord commanded us to observe all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God, and for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is this day. And then it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to observe all these commandments before the Lord our God as he has commanded us. And so with it, here once again the reinforcement: teach this to your children. When they ask, you tell them. When they want to know, you tell them. Because if we're quite honest with each other this morning, if you think about things, You know, we think about American society. You know, how many of y'all enjoy your freedoms? I hope you do, right? There's certain things in our Constitution that our founding fathers put in there because they wanted to create a system in which people can have freedom, and lots of freedoms, right? It's the rule of the people. It's a republic. Now, if we don't teach our kids how important freedom of speech is, or freedom of religion is, or no unreasonable search and seizure, all those things that are in there, if we don't teach those to our kids, then what happens after a generation? They forget. And then it's easy for somebody to come in and say, you know what, you really don't need that. You really don't need that. And here's the other thing with freedom of speech. You know, the cost of freedom of speech is speech. Y'all know that, right? I might not agree with your speech, but the freedom for me to have my freedom of speech, I got to let you say what you say. I might not agree with it, but I got to. And so if we don't teach our kids how important this is, after a generation, they forget about that importance. And here, you're one generation away from it. Now you look at Christendom at large today in America. You know, with so many people up to recently leaving the faith altogether. Why is that happening? I would say maybe it points back to this. You know, we're not telling our kids how important this relationship with God is. And so when there's no foundation built or even tried to build, what happens? They leave. You're one generation away. And that's what Moses is trying to strike out here, is saying here to them. And he would be correct, y'all, because if you fast forward, you see that. One generation falls away from the God, and then they beg God to come in and help, and He sends a judge, and now this generation remembers, and we're good, and then another generation comes, and we're bad. It's just a repeating cycle. All right, any thoughts with that before we move into chapter 7? Yes, but it's righteous in the sense that you look at what He's given us. We should have no reason to turn to false gods. Right? We've been so blessed as a people. Why would you want to turn away from a God that's been so good to us? And looking at them in this specific situation in Deuteronomy, everything that He's given them. Okay? And so it's like it'd be a slap in the face, y'all. It'd be a slap in the face. All right. Any other comments or questions before we move on? All right. Let's go over to lesson 4, please. Chapter 7 details with a command to destroy the Canaanites. And so Moses repeated the commandment to exterminate the idolatrous Canaanites, which had previously been given in Exodus 34, 12 through 17, and Numbers 33, 51 through 56. The Lord reminded Israel that in conquering the land of Canaan, she would defeat 7 nations greater and mightier than herself in verse 1. This she could do because God was with her. When the Israelites defeated these nations, they should utterly destroy them. They should make no covenant with them, nor show mercy on them. This is amazing in the sense that before you get into the wilderness wanderings, there's absolutely no faith, right? Largely there's no faith that they can conquer this land, and yet God says, you know, there are seven nations that are greater and mightier than you, and now they're all in. We're going to go take this land. But God says, I'm going to be the difference. I'm going to be the difference. They're bigger than you. They might be, from the look of things, they might be stronger than you, but you've got something they don't have, and that is me. Okay? And like I've taken care of you the whole time, I will take care of you through this. But here's my command. When this starts, we're just not beating them. We're wiping them out. Okay? The influence, all of it's got to go. Because you cannot serve 2 masters, and 2 people can't live in the same house that are in these 2 particular positions here. Okay? You cannot let this hang around here. because there's going to be problems. But I will be with you and I will help you to achieve this. But this is my command. Clean it out. Now, should that have been easy? Should have been easy. Should have been easy. No. Yes. That's right. He did. He did. He absolutely did. And this is probably that, and I'm sure that that same conversation was had amongst the people themselves, right? But it's also, everybody that's cornered, the worst animal you can ever encounter is the one that's cornered, correct? I mean, I learned that lesson, y'all. I learned that lesson bad. My aunt, she's not here yet, so I can tell the story. She had this nice little cat that she wanted to get rid of, and she called me, of all people. I don't know why she called me, but she calls me and wants me to get rid of this cat, y'all. And so the cat was always nice. I always was able to pick it up and pet it and whatnot. But I guess the cat got the feeling that she was getting evicted, and she had just had kittens. And I went to pick her up, and she let me pick her up. But when she saw that box she was about to go into, buddy, that cat became a different creature. And I still have the scars on my arm to prove it. That's the last time I'm removing a cat. But when you think about the Israelites here, even though they have no formal training of what, so first they do have the guarantee of God that this is going to happen, but they are a cornered animal, so to speak. You can't go back to Egypt, right? This is it. You've got to fight your way. And they've learned that lesson. If we don't have faith that we can take this land, we just did 40 years of wandering, you know what I mean? And you better believe that young generation that is now the generation that's the adults and everything, I guarantee you they're like, listen, we ain't doing this again. Because we just did 40 years because of them. I don't want to find out what this is going to be. And so with that, they were cornered. They had to fight. They were fighting y'all for their existence here. They're fighting for their existence. And God says, I will do this. He goes on to say, intermarriage with the Canaanites was expressly forbidden because of the danger that this posed to the faith of the Israelites in verses 3 and 4 of chapter 7. You shall not make marriages with them. You shall not give your daughter to their son, nor take their daughter for your son, for they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. So the anger of the Lord will be aroused against you and destroy you suddenly. All right, you don't do this, okay? Now, this is a lesson for us, y'all, as well, okay? There was a guy I know of that he said, I have a rule. He had a couple of daughters, and he said, I have a rule, and that rule is when you date a guy, if he is not like-minded, you got 3 months to convert him. And if you can't convert him in 3 months while you're living in my house, he gone. Now, some people would probably have a problem with that. Some people might say, oh, that's just too much. That's too much. And I understand that you do have situations where people can be converted through that. I know there's evidence of that. But as a parent, what do I want to do? I want to make sure that my kid, I'm setting them up in the best possible situation. And I'm sure if I can see that, which Sophia's got a very long time before she's allowed to date anybody. I don't know if I even will let her date until she leaves the house. We'll see. But I'm already thinking about that type of stuff. I don't know if I'm paranoid or what, but I'm already thinking about that stuff. And so I got to the very best of my ability, I got to help control the influences. Can I take away every bad influence? No, I can't. She's got to live her own life and make her decisions. But when it comes to somebody that is in a close relationship with her, which is going to be the greatest influence on her outside of her mother and myself, what do I do? What do I do? What do we do as parents? Do we invoke the same rule? Do we give them more time? The one thing I don't want is, and I hope she's not easily influenced to where she can be pulled away that easily. But everybody's got to make their own choices as well. So he says here that intermarriage with the Canaanites was expressly forbidden because this is what's going to happen. And y'all, the Lord was true with all this because this all would come to pass. Idolatry could not be tolerated. The Lord said that it should be exterminated. But this you shall deal with them. You shall destroy their altars and break down their sacred pillars and cut down their wooden images and burn down their carved images with fire. Verse 5. All of that idolatry should be exterminated. And y'all, as Christians today, we can also have idols in our life. An idol, y'all, is anything that's in your life that you place more importance of than the Lord Himself. Okay? Y'all ever heard that before? So what idols do you got in your life? Is it a career? Is it a relationship? What is it? Okay? Because He says here, exterminate those things. Get those things out. My most important relationship is with my God. That's what it should be. And if something's coming in and knocking God off self-center there, then I need to be brave enough to look at it and do something with it. And so because He's not going to tolerate that, y'all. God's been too good to us to expect second place or third place or fourth place or whatever. All right. Let's see. Israel enjoyed a unique relationship with God. They were a holy people, a special people unto God. Verse 6, this special relationship to God required holiness on the part of Israel. The unique position came because of God's sovereign grace, not Israel's righteousness, okay? In other words, God chose to have a relationship with these people. He didn't have to. He chose them, all right? He chose them to have this. It wasn't because of their righteousness. It was because of His grace. He chose them. And because of that, they should be grateful for that relationship. Just as Christians, y'all, we should be grateful that the Lord has opened up the opportunity that we can have a relationship with Him. And you know, when we look at that, the fact that He's opened up the door through His Son to us, how should that make us feel? Should make us feel good, grateful, blessed. Should we cherish that relationship? Absolutely. Should we nurture that relationship? Absolutely. I hope so, because that's the defining part. I mean, that's the defining part of a strong relationship is what am I doing to nurture that, okay? If I'm married and I just never say anything complimentary to my wife. I never take her out, make her, for date nights. I never do anything to let her know that she's special to me. What's going to happen in that relationship, y'all? I don't think it's going to go well, okay? I don't think it's going to go well. And so when I look at my relationship with God, same thing. I need to nurture that relationship as well. Be thankful, be blessed for it because you are. Israel should keep the Lord's commandments because of God's grace towards those who love Him and keep His commandments and His vengeance toward the disobedient. The Lord promised prosperity in the land of promise to the obedient, which included making fruitful the wombs of their wives and their animals, and the removal of the diseases of Egypt, full occupation of the land in verse 16. The Lord promised to be with Israel in driving out the Canaanites in verse 17. Israel should draw assurance by remembrance of God's work in destroying Pharaoh and the miracles which they witnessed during the wilderness wanderings in verse 19. The Lord promised to send the hornet among them to put terror in the hearts of the Canaanites. In other words, remember what I've done. Remember how we got here. Remember the story. Remember. The conquest of the land would be gradual. Verse 22. To prevent the land from becoming wild, being overrun with wild beasts, the Lord did not promise to drive out the Canaanites with one mighty conquest, but by gradually displacing them. During the conquest, Israel would defeat their kings, verse 24. However, Israel was to destroy their images, burning them in fire. They were not to be brought into their houses as the trophies of war, verses 25-26. Rather, they were to be destroyed, lest some of the Israelites become involved in idolatry through them. And so with that, he's telling them here that this is not going to be a very fast campaign. It's just not, I'm not going to just blink an eye and boom, it's there. It's going to be gradual, okay? In other words, it's going to take some time. So how does that work with our human minds, that something takes time? Not good. Do we as a people, do we want instant gratification? Okay, I don't know about y'all, but I get aggravated whenever Amazon's supposed to bring, Amazon says it's supposed to be coming in 2 days and it winds up being a week, and I get aggravated. What about y'all? Yeah. I want instant gratification, okay? In my mind, whenever I call the electrician to come over to my house and fix this, or someone to come over and fix that, when they leave, it should be done, right? And sometimes it doesn't work that way, right? I want instant gratification. And when I don't have it, I start to lose faith in the institutions or the ones that are with that, correct? And this is the warning. This is the warning here. It's going to take some time. I'm not just going to snap a finger and it happens. It's going to be a gradual conquest. But I'm telling you that up front so you know. So you're going to have to do what? Starts with a T and ends with a T. Trust. You are going to, patient too, you're going to have to trust me. Okay? God's saying you got to trust me. I've told you I was going to give you this land. It will be yours, but it's going to be gradual. And there's a purpose for that. Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, it's not divided yet. Okay, so you got to go and conquer, get it all, and then you'll separate it to the various. This is who gets this, and this is who gets that. But the idea here is that even though this is a gradual, here's the conditions and here's the commandments. As you move, you get rid of all of it. Okay, this is going to be yours, not yours sharing with someone else. Because if you don't wipe out the influences will always be there. Okay? And that's when you're going to intermarry, and that's when you're going to have issues. And that's what we'll see. Because they did not listen to him. They did not. And then in chapter 8, in verses 1 through 20, we get a review of the wilderness wanderings. Moses reminded Israel of their wandering in the wilderness, revealing to them the spiritual gains which came through the sojourning there. He began by exhorting Israel to obedience, once again, obey. Then he reminded her that the Lord had led them through the wilderness for these 40 years for the purpose, okay, one, of humbling her, okay? God had to teach them a lesson in humility, okay? Would you have learned that lesson? After 40 years, I think I would have learned it, right? Especially if I was that younger generation that would be able to go into the land. And then proving her. The word humble means to bring them by means of distress and privations to feel their need of help and their dependence upon God. Prove means by placing them in such positions in life as would drive them to reveal what was in their heart, whether they believed in the omnipotence, love, and righteousness of God or not. The Lord had distinctly spiritual purposes for the 40 years of wilderness wanderings. And so he wanted to humble her and prove her, okay? He wanted them to understand that they were dependent upon him, okay? And they had been up to that point. That wasn't some new revelation, y'all. They already were, but they just had to realize it, right? And then to prove, okay, they had to prove her. Says here that he placed them in such situations in life as would drive them to reveal what was in their heart. In other words, they would come to the realization that not only are they dependent upon him, but they love him and they want to follow him. And there were probably some up until through those wilderness wanderings, I can imagine just, human nature. Don't you think that some of that older generation that was, for lack of a better word, was being phased out, so to speak? Don't you think that they were sharing with that younger generation, don't make the same mistakes we made? I mean, this is God. This is who He is, and He's a good God. We failed. This is on us. Don't make these same mistakes. Love Him because, look, this is what He did. And so something had to have taken root there with this other generation that would become the generation that goes in to take the land, because they go in and everything starts off really good. So something had to take root there. So the children of Israel were to learn that man shall not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Verse 3, through the sustenance of God, Israel survived in places where there was no food or water, in order that Israel might learn that God can and will sustain them, with or without ordinary means. Man's existence does not depend upon his food and water, but upon his God. He needs to look beyond the gifts of the giver. Not only did God provide food and water, He also preserved their garments, that they had sufficient and adequate clothing. A third purpose for the wilderness wanderings was chastening. Like a father chastens his son, so also God chastened Israel through the wilderness wanderings. Okay, so I don't know about y'all, but growing up, I learned the greatest lessons through chastening or discipline. How about y'all? What lessons really stick in your mind today? It probably came at the point of a whipping, right? Okay, because I don't know about y'all. Maybe y'all were that kid, but I learned that lesson pretty quick. Okay, Dad used to call them whippings. I call them beatings. But I remember one time I wrecked our four-wheeler. I mean, I wrecked it pretty good. I kind of shattered the fiberglass fenders and all that kind of stuff. I ran into a pole going really fast trying to show off with a girl who was riding with me. And you know what I learned after that encounter with my father? Don't ever do that again. Don't ever do that again. I'm sorry. A kiss ain't worth all that. So we learn through correction. We learn through correction. That's what God was doing here with them. He was chastening them. And so because of these spiritual blessings which Israel received during the wilderness wanderings, Moses exhorted Israel to obey the Lord's commandments. The Lord promised to bring Israel into a land where there was prosperity, abundant water, grain crops, vineyards, fig trees, olives, and honey. They would be abundantly blessed, lacking nothing. And so God had taken care of them through all of this, okay? In places where they probably shouldn't have food, shouldn't have water, in a situation where clothing would have been an issue, what has He done? He's taken care of every bit of it. And now what are they going to have? They're going to have abundance. They're going to have all this stuff. They're going to be lacking nothing. A new threat would assault Israel's faith in the land of promise, the danger of materialism and prosperity, verse 10. In her prosperity, Israel should beware of forgetting her God. Prosperity has attendant dangers. Arrogance, number one. Negligence of God. In her prosperity, Israel might forget the God who sustained them during the wilderness wanderings. You think about that idea of arrogance. It's really easy for us to become arrogant because we think we have done all of this. Okay? And it's not. It's God who's given us this. Negligence of God, forgetting who He is, or just simply rebelling against God, saying, I don't care, I'm doing it my way. So they might forget what they had experienced, the privations to prove thee to do good at that latter end. Instead, Israel might become puffed up in her self-conceit and think that they had conquered the land of Canaan through their own power and might. Now, as we go through this, we know and we understand that they were not able to do this without God. There's just no way they could do this. Getting back to the point where they're not trained soldiers. Even though they might be that animal cornered, they still, y'all, are They don't have trained soldiers. They do have a God that handles it. Okay? And so you have to be careful that you don't think it's you. It is clearly Him. Now we can see that. And we understand that, but human nature is to think it is all about you, correct? I mean, you think about history. We thought it was all about us. I think my history people that are in here, anybody know who the guy was that first come out with the heliocentric idea of the universe? Because we used to think that everything in this universe revolved around us. Yeah, Nicholas Copernicus, absolutely. Look at that. Nicholas Copernicus, he was the first guy to develop the heliocentric model, which is everything revolves around the what? The sun. The sun is the center of the universe, not the earth. But we thought it was. Why? Because naturally, we're here. It should go around us, right? Because it's all about us. That's what God is telling these people is you're going to have to fight that mindset. That mindset that it is, even though you're loved and you're valued, it's not all about you. It's about Him, okay? And He's earned that. He's earned that. And so don't get too comfortable. Don't let the comforts that you're fixing to have pull you away from God. Don't think that you did all of this because it wasn't all on you. It's on Him. Israel should always remember that the Lord gave them the wealth that they would receive. The Lord promised Israel that if she forgot the Lord, He would destroy them off the land which He had given to them. Their continued possession of the land was conditioned upon obedience to the Lord's commandments. Now, some people might ask, well, that's pretty harsh. Well, y'all, that was the original agreement, correct? When God made this covenant with Israel, wasn't that the agreement? So what's essentially God saying? Just uphold your end, correct? Just do what you're supposed to do. If you do what you're supposed to do and uphold your end, there's no issues here. So just do your part. I'm doing my part. You can see I'm doing my part. I will continue to do my part. You just do yours, right? And everything will be fine. I mean, if I take my car and if I've got, any of y'all ever bought that extended warranty on your vehicle when you go get it? If something happens to my vehicle, I expect it to be handled, right? Because I did my part. I paid for it. You do your part. And if you don't do your part, then do I have a reason to be upset? Yes. That's what God's saying here. Okay? Do what you're supposed to do, and we're fine. But if you don't, we're going to have issues. And the issues is, the very people that I told you to push out of this land are going to be the ones that oppress you. That's what's going to happen. All right? And unfortunately, these people, generations later, do not learn so well. Okay? So there was a breakdown in the family, a breakdown in the home, a breakdown in remembrance, a breakdown in the teaching of these generations coming up. Something happened. Or these people just, hardness of heart, they just said, I'm going to do it my way. Okay? And that could very well be it as well. All right, final thoughts for this morning. All right, we will pick up in Lesson 5 next week. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to see everybody.